Hello, everyone. I'm Brian Terriel, and I'm the author of Elf Mastery, which is both the first book of the trilogy and also what I just call the trilogy itself. So I've got the first book cover spread out behind me here. Um, and it's not exactly the right ratio. That's okay. I just wanted to start a channel talking about my experience with the self-publishing process. If there's any of you out there as well who are doing that. I get maybe some feedback from my experiences with it. Maybe I'll learn stuff from you guys too. And full transparency, I also want to talk about my books. So a lot of that, I might just be talking about my characters and stories and stuff like that. If full transparency, I've never really been good with the social media or marketing end of self-publishing, which apparently you also have to do in traditional publishing anyway. But working on it. So yeah, I'm also trying to publicize these as much as I can, but I don't have a big following yet. But anyway, I just wanted to talk about why I chose to do self-publishing on this video here. Because it was kind of a big decision. I was 100% committed initially to doing traditional publishing. So I think I'll start out where I got the concept of the book and what led me to the decision of doing the self-publishing route. So the concept for Elf Mastery is that the world is like it's actually modern day Earth, but the concept is behind the scenes there's mythological creatures and elves and dwarves and fairies and all that sort of thing, but they all run the Earth. So basically stuff like gravity, light, um animals and nature and all that stuff doesn't happen by itself. There's actually these mystical and magical creatures that are actually managing it all behind the scenes, kind of like a big company sort of thing. And so the concept is that the main character, Kyla, here, is a young elf woman that's leaving her very remote elf village to kind of go to a government-owned school so she can find a vocation, what she's going to do with the rest of her life in this world that I call the world of order, right? So they're the ones who took all this chaotic matter originally that was in the galaxy and put it together to create ordered matter. And so she wants to find out what she can do for the rest of her life, just like we do. And it's kind of her adventure going through that. So originally I'd actually conceived it as a cartoon. Like I was thinking of doing it as like a kid's show. But then I had talked to someone who worked in animation and in TV, and he was like, just a heads up, if you submit your ID and somebody picks it up, it's going to come out looking completely different than what you imagined. Which honestly, a lot of times I'd be okay with, but I was pretty attached to the concept and the characters. And I was like, I kind of want to tell the story that I want to tell first. And then if somebody later wants to pick it up and change things, it won't matter because I've written the books out the way I wanted them. So, I decided, okay, I'll do these as books first. But I was 100% committed to traditional publishing at first. Because I was like, it gives it more, I thought, it gives it more status. You've got through the gatekeepers and people have seen it as good enough to sell. They help you with distribution and all that sort of thing, and formatting and proofreading and all that. So I thought, no, 100%, I'm going to go traditional publishing route. So I finished the first book, Elf Mastery here. Sorry, it's a mirror image to what I'm trying to point at. And I got kind of the green screen effecty thing going on there. But it took me 2 years to write the first book because I was kind of just doing casual, right here and there over the course of a couple of years. And then I was querying agents to try to get someone to pick it up. But one thing I noticed, I hadn't even really received any rejections yet, but when I was noticing a pattern with the submission guidelines on the agents, and just an awful lot of them were requiring love triangles. So this was like 2016. I think like what's it called? Twilight and stuff was still pretty big. And so like one agent even said in the submission guidelines, you have, if you're writing for this target group, because I was targeting like, middle grade, young adult, you have to have a love triangle. It is the industry standard. So there were a lot of them that talked about love triangles, but this was the most blatant, like, you need to have a love triangle. We're not even going to consider it type of thing. And I was like, I don't have a love triangle and I don't want a love triangle. So that's when I decided, I was like, well, you know, the technology's out now where we can actually just do this ourselves and put it on Amazon. So I had to decide. I was like, okay, if I try to go with a publisher, I've got to bend to. So the thing with publishing is, like, when you write a book, if any of you out there have written a book, quite often you're putting a lot of yourself into the book, and it's like you put kind of your heart and your soul into it. And that's not necessarily what's going to sell. So somebody who's selling books, their main interest is this going to make money? So a lot of times that'll include chasing trends, and that makes sense from a business standpoint. How am I going to get the most money? And as an author, of course, you also want to make money, but I was like, okay, there's got to be a middle ground where I don't have to chase all the trends and tropes that are popular. Obviously, I want people to buy my book and to read it to like it, but I've also put a lot of heart and soul into it that I don't want to sacrifice. So I kind of had to make a decision, like, what was more important to me. So I made a commitment to myself. I was like, okay, I'm going to write it the way I want it. And I was like, maybe people will hate it. When I put out the first book, I was like, okay, I'm going to self-publish this. I'm just going to do it myself. Maybe people will hate it, but I'm still going to finish the trilogy because I'd already planned it out as a trilogy. I kind of was a conscious choice that I was like, okay, putting my heart and soul into a book and getting it out the way that I see it is more important than writing something that I feel is hollow and shallow that will make more money, which maybe is not the smartest choice because I have struggled marketing it since then. But I feel very attached to the books now and the characters and everything. So I don't think I would have changed that. I feel like I would rather have an unknown book that I'm proud of than a successful book that I just can't stand. So no, I don't regret that. Although it is a difficult road. So because I was doing it myself, and I didn't have a lot of money, I wasn't able to, go out provide, because I'd always recommend get a professional editor and artist and everything you can like that. So this is not the original cover. I'll try to post I'm going to edit this after, so I'll put an image of the original cover. And the girl that did this was very nice to work with. She's a lovely young lady from Poland, and I found her on DeviantArt. I couldn't afford a professional artist, and she's not really an artist, but she kind of drew these images that I thought, okay, that kind of captures the style that, I think it's cute and it can do well. So I hired her to do the book covers for the original book covers for the trilogy. I think I'll talk about more about the art later, but I just want to talk about how I kind of went really cheap and had to do a lot of stuff myself in the beginning. So I hired somebody from DeviantArt who charged very little, to the point where I actually charged her like double, I think, or I paid her, I think, a lot more than she had asked for, because I think she was underselling herself. But for the editing and all that, I couldn't afford a professional editor, but I have a lot of experience, with literature and stuff. So I was like, okay, I can edit this. It is hard to edit your own work, by the way. I think the first book, Elf Mastery here, they did like 17 edits or something like that. And then there were still mistakes coming out after I released it. Hopefully they're all fixed now. And then I had to learn how to format books in both ebook and paperback style. And I had to learn, how to distribute. Luckily, Amazon does the distribution, but I also did like an audiobook version of this one with Murphy Napier did that for me, but I don't know if she does that sort of thing anymore. So we didn't do the other two anyway. Well, that was pretty expensive. So I did that's kind of where my money went into, is that. But for the self-publishing, I was like, okay, I've got to learn how to format books to make them look professional. I've got to edit them myself. I've got to find beta readers, and I've got to find reviewers. And so there was a lot of emailing and trying to get people to review the book. I was trying to be very diligent about the fake reviews. So there's apparently a lot of people will hire companies where they just kind of pump out reviews for you. I stayed away from that, stayed away from having my friends and family go in and do reviews for me. Obviously, a couple people did that I know. But I know my sister tried, but she said she was my sister, so that review got blocked. But I was like, don't worry about it, because I wanted to do it as legitimately as possible, which again at a level of difficulty, but you know, your integrity is worth more than a few dollars, I think. So the challenge. So, but when I got the first book out, I was really attached to it. I was really pleased with it, and so but yeah, publicizing it, promoting it, I found very, very difficult because I'm very weak with social media and marketing. So that's where I still struggle. So getting the book out and getting it known. But one of the things I did, you know, I've sent out the books to a couple libraries. I actually got a tweet a few years ago from a library in Riverhead, New York. They were like, I guess I was one of their staff picks for the months, and so they added me on the tweet, and so that was really nice. And so I sent them a set of the new copies of books with the new covers recently, and I sent a couple. You know, I sent books to like local libraries and stuff like that. What I haven't done is tried to do book signings and promotions just because of time, because I do have a full-time job and other responsibilities, so it's tough to find like a whole day where I can set aside, go to a bookstore, do signings. Plus, you have to pre-buy all the books that you need to sign and sell and stuff there. So I haven't done that sort of thing yet, which would probably be a good idea. But I think the day of the internet here, I'm kind of more working on trying to promote stuff online. So I guess I'll talk a little bit about the book itself, just the general concept. I want to go into in-depth characters probably in a different video, but there were a few conscious decisions that I made writing this book that might be nice to touch on in this video. And that was the nature of the main character here. I know I have to point the opposite way now that I want it to appear on the screen, because I'm looking at like it's not a mirror, it's the opposite of a mirror image. My finger's pointing the opposite way to me. Anyhow, so yeah, so this is Kyla Nim, young elf woman, as I mentioned before. And I had to make a big decision when I was creating her character. So she wasn't the initial. I came up with the setting before I came up with the plot or the characters. But then she was the character I came up with, and I gave her a lot of characteristics that were kind of me, right? So she grew up in a very small, remote village like I did. She kind of went into the world fairly naive, like I did, you know, growing up in a very small village. When you go to a city, or you don't learn the same sorts of things. You're not socialized in the same way as someone who grows up in a larger center. And this was pre-internet, so you didn't have access to how the rest of the world was thinking, right? Except through like television or, you know, books and stuff. So I remember my experience moving into larger centers and, you know, growing up, going to university in much larger centers and kind of slowly adjusting. So she comes across as kind of naive, maybe a little over optimistic and chipper, but without an understanding of how other people think and work. So a lot of that actually comes from my experience growing up and going out into the world. So I had to make a decision. I was like, I kind of know from my own experience that some people love that sort of a person and some people hate that sort of a person, right? And so I was like, so I was like, I could give her like kind of a flat personality where apparently a lot of authors do that with their main character. They'll kind of use them as like a reader insert. But I've never read books that way. So it's not something I really identified with, where you try to put yourself into the main character. I mean, I did when I wrote it. Obviously, that's kind of some of me coming out. But when I read a book, I'm not like imagining I'm the main character. And so I think I just don't connect to the idea that people do that. But I was like, but apparently some authors will kind of make their character flat personality. Like Harry Potter is a great character, but his personality's not nearly as distinct as like Ron or Hermione, right? But I thought, no, I want a character with a strong personality, and I was aware that was going to be polarizing. So I was like, okay, some people are really going to like her, some people are just going to hate her, and that's kind of what happened. However, I will say this, is that most people by the end really like her. So I actually had a beta reader comment on that. I think that's one of the things that pushed me forward with this idea was she said that, in the beginning of the book she didn't really like her, but by the end she was one of her favorite fantasy characters, because the whole point of the books are Kyla's growth as a person. So she's fairly flawed in the beginning, but it's about her becoming more wise and aware, self-sacrificing, all these traits developing as she goes through her adventures. And she goes through a lot of suffering and anguish and that sort of thing throughout the series. It gets kind of even grim and dark. Pages 2 and 3. That's books 2 and 3. And but by the end, she's quite a changed person, but I think you can still feel that she's the same person. Like, she doesn't lose her internal nature. So I'm very happy with her character. But because I was aware that this was going to be somewhat polarizing, that actually shows up in chapter 1. She meets a couple new people in the first chapter, a couple who really take to her right out of the gate, and one who just by a glance really just doesn't like her. And I was like, yeah, that's how I perceive it's going to happen. But, even the one who doesn't like her later on, they get more civil and stuff. So it was kind of how I expected people to treat her on reading it. But I think she's an absolute wonderful character. And because she's part of her is drawn from my life experience, I'm like, oh, it does hurt a little when people don't like her out of the gate, because I'm like, oh, you wouldn't have liked me when I was 12 and I just moved to a larger town and was like, still had the very small town view of the world. But anyways, yeah, so self-publishing, sorry for the ramble. Self-publishing wise, one more thing. Sorry, I'm digressing. Yeah. You'll notice the Piers Anthony. So one of my proud moments was when I wrote the first book, I was like, oh, I knew I needed to help try to promote it, but I was like, I grew up reading a lot of Piers Anthony books, so I wrote to him and asked if he'd read and review it. So he did. He actually did all 3 books and then put them in his newsletter. So that was cool. Yeah. So, and I didn't know him, no contact, but I just knew he was the sort of author who always responds to fans. Like, he was always really good about connecting with fans and things. So I thought, I'll just try. And if he doesn't, I gave him a free copy. So I'm like, look, if you want to review it, great. If you don't, here's a free book, because I grew up, appreciation for your work. So we did. So that's great. What I recommend self-publishing for you? I think it's I enjoyed it. I actually think I enjoyed it a lot more than trying to work with a traditional publisher, because I got to do it the way that I wanted to do it. What I would say is really rein in your expectations for how well it's going to do, because with the ease of self-publishing, like, now that that's a thing and it's not that hard to do, everyone's doing it, right? So no matter how good your writing is, you are in a very large pond. Like, you're in an ocean full of other fish, and even if you're the greatest fish in the ocean, chances of anyone actually seeing you are very small. So it's hard to get noticed. And now even there's a thing where you have AI writing books. Now I use AI for like the art and stuff, because I can't draw. Well, there's a long story about that I'm going to get into later, because I was like, I only want hand-drawn artists, and that changed for reasons I will go into in a different video. But yeah, like, so there's books just being written by straight up by AI being posted on there. There's pretty much anyone who can type or write can now put a book up fairly easily. So the competition is very, very high. So what the gatekeepers used to do, the agents and stuff, is they would limit how much was going into the market. So it was, it kept you out, made it much harder for you to get into the market. But once you were in, you had a lot less competition to deal with. Now there's literally millions of books on Amazon. So just getting seen is very difficult. Hence this video. But I do recommend it if you enjoy your work, right? If you're looking to make a quick buck, it's very unlikely. I mean, yeah, people do it. There are self-publishers who go out and just make a ton of money, but there's also people who win the lottery. And your odds may still be slightly better writing a book, but I don't think it's too far off of winning the lottery. But I found it very rewarding learning how to do all my own. It's like the fact that I can look at this now and be like, yeah, I designed that cover. I had a friend design the first one, but I've designed this cover. I did all my formatting. I learned how to format even ebooks where you can, type on the chapter headings and go to where you want, blah, blah, blah. all that stuff I learned how to do. And it was a lot of work, but I learned a lot of skills. So I think if you love the craft and you love writing, I think self-publishing is a very nice way to go. But let me know what you think in the comments. What types of things you want to know about? Do you have any questions? I want to do future videos talking about the art, the writing, the story, characters, and all that. But we'll see how you guys feel about this one. So this is kind of an intro. All right. You have a wonderful day.